What's up, everybody? This is Norb coming at you. What is it today? Today is Wednesday night, I think. Yeah, Wednesday night. So first I want to say thank you to so many of you out there who've sent me kind text messages and DMs and comments wishing my dad well. So first of all, I appreciate all of you guys' support and well wishes. I know my dad's been getting a lot of his phone, not that he's been able to really go on his phone much, but I know he appreciates it too. So thank you so much for asking and just wanting to know how he's doing. So part of my doing this video is to help answer a lot of those questions that people have out there who are genuinely concerned for my dad. And so here's the situation. Just to sum up from yesterday, I did take him to the ER. My dad and my mom tested positive for COVID last week. Yesterday he was having a little bit of trouble breathing, so I took him to the ER and they admitted him and he stayed there overnight. So this morning I had a chance to talk to the respiration specialist and the doctor who's taking care of him. So what they're working on right now is mainly the oxygen issue. As with most patients struggling with COVID, the biggest danger is if they get to a point where their lungs get too much inflammation or congestion, then they can't breathe, and then that's, the ones who really suffer end up having to go to, get on a ventilator. Is the worst case scenario, basically, where you're like in a coma, having a machine breathing for you with this tube going down your throat into your lungs. So luckily my dad didn't have that extreme. I took him last night. His oxygen level had dipped down to 87. Normal is 95 to 100, and so that's why they admitted him last night. So he stayed the night. This morning he was they had put him on oxygen with the tubes in the nose, and he had gotten up to the lower 90s again, but then this morning it dropped to below 90 again. So they changed out the tubes to a higher oxygen output so he could have more concentration of oxygen. So they did that, and that got his numbers back up to the 90s. I think it actually got as high as 98. So that was really good to see. Let's see what else. He hadn't eaten much most of the weekend, so he got a little bit better appetite. And what they're doing now, yesterday they put him on I forgot how to pronounce it, remdesivir, which is to treat COVID, and then also a steroid in an IV to help deal with the inflammation. But as it turns out, the remdesivir is probably not doing as much effect on it because of my dad's level. So they stopped doing that, and they're just sticking with the higher oxygen output and the steroid to help deal with the inflammation. So there is some fluid in my dad's lungs, I think the right lung. They did an x-ray on it, and it turned out to not be bacterial pneumonia, which is always a dangerous thing for elderly folks. So that was a good thing that it wasn't that, but there is still some fluid in there. And they said that's just the body's natural way of fighting off a virus. The inflammation is just blood going to that area to try to defend against the disease, and then the phlegm and the mucus is part of also trying to get rid of it. It's ironic because the body's basically trying to fight this thing, but in the process of fighting it, it's slowly making the body not be able to breathe, which is what you need to survive. So it's the combination is pretty tough. So the medicine is to help do that. So as of the time I'm making this is 5:15 Pacific time. It's looking like at this point my dad's gonna have to stay another night, and basically he's gonna have to be there until he gets to a point where he can breathe on his own and have sufficient oxygen amount. That's mainly the goal here. So they're gonna just stay on the track. His vital signs also seem to be moving in the right direction, out of the kind of emergency situation right now, and yeah, that's the primary focus, to get to a point where he can breathe okay. So he'll need to be there tonight, and until he can get to a point where he can breathe on his own and have enough oxygen. So how much longer will that be? It's hard to tell. it's really a matter of how quickly his body can fight this off, and things start to clear itself up. And so I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you've had, bronchitis, asthma, anything where your ability to breathe is really hard. I had that bronchitis case a while back, and I had pneumonia in high school, and that feeling where you start coughing and you really can't even catch a breath. I mean, we were having bronchitis, and I'd start having a violent coughing fit, and I literally, you feel like you're suffocating for a second until you can finally just get through it and start catching your breath again. So it's a horrible feeling, and you don't realize how much you take air and breathing for granted until you have that cut off from you. And that is probably what's the most debilitating, suffering part of this disease, or this, of COVID, is how it robs you of your ability to breathe if it gets really bad. So people who suffer from emphysema, from smoking and things like that, that's a rough way to go. That's a rough way to have to live, because every breath is like a struggle, and you feel like you're just, people complain about wearing masks and how hard it is to breathe. It's like that, but imagine it on a much, much more higher level of restriction. So he's doing better. Just even talking to him, I could tell from yesterday when I was driving him to the hospital, I really had a moment of fear, thinking, oh my gosh, could this be the last time I see my dad again? Will I drop him off because I know I couldn't be there as a visitor? Would this be the last time I see him? That ran through my head, because I know that was what happened to so many people who suffered from this when it first happened, and I guess it's still happening now. So, but what a terrible situation that would be. I was fearing that wasn't going to be the case. So the good thing is my dad says the people at Valley Medical, they were taking really good care of him. He's very grateful for the treatment that he's gotten, and I think actually one of the nurses knew him. She was a Filipino nurse and knew my dad, so it was nice to have a familiar face there. So just speaking to him on the phone, he's still not back to his normal energy level, but it's just a little bit more conversational, a little bit able to express his thoughts and sentences, unlike yesterday where he was really out of it, almost like how you'd be if you were sort of half awake, and sort of being able to answer questions, but just being really, really loopy. So I'm relieved that things are progressing. The vital signs are moving in the right direction. But he's not completely out of the woods yet, because he needs to be able to get to a point where he doesn't have to rely on the oxygen to breathe. So that's the big mystery. How long will that take to get there? And will he hopefully continue to move towards a positive direction where it's slowly, they can get away, wean him off the oxygen and be able to breathe on his own. So now it's just a matter of time and his own body's ability to fight this. And again, my dad's 82 years old, so while I've been very grateful for the fact that he's been in very good health, he's been very strong mentally, he's been as sharp as he's ever been, and it's really the only difference is at his age, he just moves a little slower. When we walk to the games, he's just, the steps are a little bit not as fast as they used to be, and he has a hard time keeping up. And for walking, I gotta go a little bit slower to not leave him behind. So, but other than that, he's been really, able to do pretty much all the same stuff that he could do. So seeing him in his condition yesterday, and just kind of hearing him over the weekend while talking to him on the phone was really tough. So, because I don't usually see my dad like that, where he's mentally in sort of this foggy space. So that's kind of where things are right now. So he will stay another night, and we'll just have to monitor day by day, see how it goes, and just constantly continue to check in, since we can't visit with him, can only just talk to him. 49ers Ultimate Report says, hard to read, should really be doing this while I'm driving. It's John J. I want to say, I know what you're dealing with. If you talk to someone, let me know. Dad, get well soon. Thank you, man. Appreciate it for the support, super chat, and all that. So, yeah, and my mom is at home by herself for the time being. I'm continuing to keep her filled in on things as we go, and so she knows the latest updates. She's feeling fine. You know, she was tested positive as well, but she didn't have nearly the symptoms that my dad did, and her oxygen level was totally normal when I checked it yesterday, and she says she's feeling great. So my mom is doing okay. It's kind of funny how this past year, starting in September, which was only 5 months ago, if some of you remember, my mom broke her leg while they were on a cruise in September, and then she had to get it operated on, and this all happened while they were down in the Bahamas, and had to go through quite the traumatic thing where then they got back, and then my dad had to basically take care of my mom, who couldn't really get around, and he had to be her assistant for a good several weeks. And then now it's completely flipped, where my dad really went, under the weather, and my mom had to go back to taking care of him. So it's nice that they've had each other to lean on during times when they were dealing with a health issue. And the first time around we weren't, they were out of the country. Second time we were out, this past weekend we were out of the state. So and then at the same time, I really shouldn't be around them anyway, because, at least not too much, because until they're no longer potentially contagious, it's a dangerous situation, for me to be around them, because I could potentially expose myself to it. So it's just such a weird thing, in terms of trying to be supportive during a time when what you're trying to help them deal with is something you can't risk getting either. So, so more power to the people, the staff at the hospital, and all the caregivers. And man, these guys are in the trenches dealing with many patients who are probably also sick and contagious, and yet they're in there, wearing what they can to protect themselves. But man, every day, every minute, every hour, they're putting themselves at risk of catching it themselves, because their job is to still take care of the patients. Because if they didn't, who else would do it, right? If everybody just left them alone because they didn't want to risk catching something, they would nobody would do it. So anyway, so I'm feeling much better than I did yesterday. Yesterday was just that feeling of concern. Reminds me of that first time I found out about my mom, not even sure what she had injured, whether it was a broken leg or didn't know if it was a hip, which would have really been bad. But just during that time when it was just an unknown as to what was going on, that was kind of how I felt yesterday, just not sure what was going on and what the diagnosis was going to be. So I feel much better today, knowing that I have spoken to the doctor, and the doctor said things were trending the right way, and just got to keep him there. I mean, I feel like if anyone's going to be able to take care of a situation, if things do start going the other direction, they got all the people and equipment and medicine to make that happen. So I'm glad he's there, and we'll just stay as long as he needs to get back on his feet. So but yeah, it's tough. It's tough. We've never gone through something like this, and I've really never had to bring either of my parents to the ER before, fortunately. So it's just it's a new thing, going through all this and learning, what to do and what to be ready for. You never really are ready for anything like this, right? You can practice all you want until something actually happens where you have to do it. Boy, it really tests your mettle, and try to keep your emotions in check, and just keep focusing on the task at hand and what you got to do, and all that. So So hopefully things will continue to get better. But I do want to say again, thank you to all of you guys, from from friends and neighbors to family near and far. One of my aunties actually drove all the way from up north to go check on my mom today to bring her some stuff. So that's really cool. The ambience to do that. And just lots of messages for people just wanting to send their wishes and checking in to make sure things are okay. So that's where we stand on things. So I see a lot of messages coming in through here, and I'm sorry I'm not able to respond to them all, but thank you. Appreciate it. And I know my dad appreciates it as well. And I guess I just inside, I think there's just I feel like I know he's going to be okay, and he's going to be able to come out of this and be back to his normal self, and it'll actually be, I'm looking forward to being able to talk to him about this and what he kind of remembers of the experience, and his recap of what he went through, because right now I feel like, or at least maybe now not as much, but during the last few days I feel like when I was talking to him, I don't know how much he was really grasping everything we were talking about, because he just was so, just having such a hard time just even sitting up and keeping his eyes open and being able to just say something. So trying to think, is there I guess lesson learned here, if I could think of how I could pass anything that I've learned from this to you guys, before it happens to you or anybody you know. I would say, again, everybody in my family and my parents were all vaccinated. Part of what might have contributed to this was that when my parents got the booster, they had the J&J vax, and then they got the Moderna booster. But when they got the booster, I don't know if they were really 100%. You're supposed to be 100% healthy when you get the booster. They might have already had some initial symptoms of COVID. So they might have gotten the booster when they already had COVID-like symptoms starting to, manifest themselves. So don't do that. If you're not 100%, you feel like, even if it's just a runny nose or something, don't get the booster until you're in perfect health. Otherwise, if this is an indication of that, it might cause you to have worse side effects, because you are putting part of the disease in your body and saying, here's a little piece, guys, practice on this guy, and that way when it shows up again, you'll be ready for it. And maybe what happened was my parents' body was already fighting it, and then they injected some more, and maybe it overwhelmed what defenses they had. I don't know if that's even accurate, but I just have to speculate at this point. So that'd be the first thing. Don't get boosted unless you are 100% feeling good. And secondly, again, we weren't here, so it was hard to read how he was, but when I listened to him on the phone, he was definitely out of it. And I guess looking back, now knowing what I know, what things turned out to be, I would have had my dad go to the ER sooner. And if I couldn't have been here to do it, I would have just told my mom to go ahead and just, if she couldn't take him herself, which might have been tough with my mom trying to help my dad, get into the car, I would have just had her call 911, have the ambulance take him sooner, because ultimately he needed to go there. He wasn't going to get out of this on his own. So I think if that was ultimately what needed to happen, sooner would have been better. He could have gotten relief sooner and not have to suffer throughout the weekend in the condition that he was, because it was a good probably Friday, Saturday, Sunday, actually even Friday. When I saw him, I did the test on Friday, he was already kind of in that hard to stand up mode. So he had Friday, maybe even Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So it was almost 6 days of feeling this way before he finally went to the ER to get relief. So that could have saved him a lot of days of misery if I'd taken in him and if he had gone in sooner. So if in doubt, I think Sooner is always better. And it's hard because I don't know about you guys, but I don't call 911 very often. You know, a lot of times I think in your own mind you rationalize, overreacting. I'm sure this is not a big deal. You know, I don't want to call 911. Ambulance is expensive. Don't want to do that unless we really feel like it's necessary. I guess looking back, if something happens and you put off maybe making that move and waiting, imagine how you would feel if if you'd gone and done something sooner instead of waiting, and then it was too late. How much that you'd have to live with that, thinking about not having done something sooner than later. That would be pretty tough, over concern that you're overreacting, or concerned that it's gonna cost something. That money you're gonna not even think about. Spend the money, save your parents' life. Not even a question. So there's that. And then the last part really would be, how did they get this? We've tried to figure this out and really still don't know where they likely got it. They don't go to a lot of places. The last place my dad went out with a lot of people out there was to the Seahawks game with me. And it seemed like a long time after that, because that was on the Sunday before, like 2 weeks ago. And then last Sunday, when it was the last away game against the Cardinals, that was when my dad first showed signs of his runny nose, and that he decided not to come over and watch the game with me because he was concerned I better not come over if I'm feeling even this might not be a good idea, which was a good move. And then he didn't develop the full-blown symptoms till after he got the booster the following Wednesday. So that's like a week and a half after the Seahawks game. That seems like a long time for, if that was the place where he got it, for it to have been the cause of his condition now, because that's almost 11 days after that game. So it's possible maybe it was some other, maybe going to the store, or because I know they been out to go to the store and do basic things like that. So we don't really know where they got it. So there wasn't any obvious, like, they shouldn't have gone to that big, rap concert where there was all these people. It wasn't obvious like that, where there was a clear event that caused it. So I don't know. We still don't know where it was, where they got it from. So hard to put a finger on that one. But appreciate eating again. Xrat 3D 12th man, thank you for your message. So I think that's really it. I think just the last thing would be, just from a mindset about this, I was already starting to kind of take things, security, for granted a little bit, in the sense that being vaccinated, boosted, I followed the guidelines of wearing the masks where I'm supposed to. If I go to the store, if I go out to an event, I wear the mask. The only place I don't do it is at home. And but even in my mind, I was thinking, you know what? It seems like now people are catching it. All they do is have a little bit of a runny nose and maybe a day of feeling it under the weather, and then they're fine. So I'm, in my mind, I'm thinking, this is as bad as it gets now, and that's really nothing to worry about. But clearly, with what my dad has gone through, that is not the case. It is not just a simple, it's no big deal. The symptoms are just something, you'll just have a little sniffle, a little bit of tiredness, and then you'll be fine. I think we still don't know why certain people react worse than others, and why some people barely notice anything, and why others end up in the hospital. And I don't think there's any clear-cut guideline. My dad's older, and he's got certain health conditions that potentially make him more vulnerable, but I don't think I know that from people that work in the hospital have said there'd be people in great health in their 30s who have died from this, and they're older people who've been fine, it's all over the place. So there is no clear rule like, oh, if you're this and this and this, you'll be fine. And, oh, but if you're this, you're in trouble. So there is no surefire way to stop it, right? And you can say I'm vaxxed, I wear my mask all the time, I should be fine. I don't think there's no way to guarantee any of these things, and you shouldn't assume that just because I'm vaccinated and because I did all this and I wear my mask, I'm not going to catch it. Anybody can catch it, and you just have to obviously be careful about the places you go to. Do as much as you can to, maximize the preventative measures that can help you from getting it, and it's all we could do, right? So this thing's obviously not going away anytime soon, so we just got to be still careful about how we conduct ourselves. And it's hard, man. I don't like wearing a mask any more than anybody else does. I don't like all the restrictions that having to do all these things and distance and all that kind of stuff. I don't like it any more than anybody else does. Nobody likes it, but you got to do what you have to do to try to make it to where it's not even about, oh, I'll be fine, but it's about, like in my dad's case, if I catch it and I only get a sniffle, but I pass it on to him and now he ends up in the hospital, that's the thing, I worry about. For the people who aren't going to be well if they get affected, they're the ones that you have to worry about, and you try to do the right thing for, because you might be fine, but just because you're fine doesn't mean somebody else might not be fine, and you can't control what only affects you. So anyway, enough of that. I'm going to wrap this up, and I will do another update probably tomorrow, since I know that for tonight he will be another day in the hospital, and I'll hopefully have some more information, if not tonight, by morning, with an update on where his condition is and see where it goes. So again, thank you so much for all of you who've sent messages, well wishes and thoughts and everything, and me and my dad, my family, all greatly appreciate it. So hope you guys stay safe, enjoy life, and for those of you who, when you know that you are not sick and you've got your family members around you, give them big hugs and kisses while you can, because it sucks when your ailing father, or be it your mom or your sister or your wife or whatever, you're pushing them in a wheelchair and you can't give them a hug without risking getting sick yourself. So hug them while you can. Tell them that you love them. You hear it all the time. Oh yeah, make sure you tell people that you love them, and all that stuff. But really try to do it. Try to do it, because you just never know when life throws you a curveball, and you don't know when you're going to get back to normal again. So do that, because you just got to cherish every moment that you got. All right, have a good one, you guys. Talk to y'all later. Go Hawks.